Welcome to Keep Hustling, where we are going past the why to get to the how. I'm your host, the always hustling Aaron Gordon, aka NY Risk Advisor, aka Mr. Keep Hustling. In this podcast, we will be diving deep into the professional and personal successes of our guests to find out how they hustled through the most difficult times in their life and their development to achieve the success they've gotten to today. So buckle up for what hopes to be an amazing ride. Let's get to it. Welcome to Keep Hustling with my guest, Yaakov Langer. Yaakov, thank you so much for being here.
It is a pleasure to be here. I'm excited. This is going to be great. Let's do it.
You're not usually on the other side of the microphone, so that
No.
On the interview, it actually made me a little nervous. I don't usually have, you're the second person with a podcast who's been on here, so I feel like a little intimidated, but we'll make it happen.
I also know with the interviews, the ones that I do, I know how much talking the guest has to do, and it's so much easier, I believe, to be the host of something. So it's definitely more difficult for me to be in the hot seat. But listen, I feel like I deserve it every here and there for putting so many people in the hot seat.
It's so true. I had someone who said to me, I wish that there was more of me talking on the podcast. I'm like, no, you don't get it. That's why this works. Right. I get to sit here and listen to people talk, and you don't need to listen to me all the time, maybe every once in a while. But really, thank you for being here. Everyone should read your bio, like I say in every episode, and just the evolution of Yaakov Langer is something incredible, and that's something that I believe about Keep Hustling. Obviously, personally, there's a lot, but professionally, I just wonder where that comes from. Your career, and especially your rise in media and evolution there, has to stem from somewhere. So we just try to kind of get back to the hustle, take us back to the upbringing or to when you started and kind of where you got this bug for inspiring people and educating them and inspiring their hustle personally.
Yeah, I have to thank my parents, because being the youngest of four boys, and there's a little more of a gap between my brother Yitzi and I. And because of that, I had a lot more freedom when I was younger. So I got away with a lot more. And don't tell Yeshivas Chaim Berlin, we had a TV growing up. And my parents were pretty good about it, but to the point, I would, they went to a wedding, this, that, they're out. I watched a lot of TV. And definitely not proud of it, but it's just something that happened, and it's definitely not my parents' fault. I was definitely mischievous in that area, and it definitely opened me up to just that world of just content and creation, and unfortunately, I didn't see that in the Jewish world. We had some stuff when Zadie was young, kind of tapes, but nothing comparable. And it's interesting back then, TV, movies. It was even before the internet, but once the internet came out, these were all completely usser. And I understand that standpoint and I respect it. But as life moved on, and I think with the internet, we really just had this hole of okay, we have Torah, we have business, but when it comes to some form of entertainment or even education, we didn't really have it. So I personally love that world of being a creator, and not to get spiritual on you, but I meant that's, we're created in the image of Hashem. Hashem is the ultimate creator. So that process of creating, I love. And I used to do it when it came to doing Camp Romu's newsletter or my yeshiva's newsletter. I would make comics in general. I made Snapchat stories and WhatsApp stories. And as of today, it's YouTube and podcast, but who knows what it's going to be in 10 years from now.
It's interesting you say that. First of all, I don't think, I'm not going to tell you how to feel, but I don't think you should apologize for watching the TV, because the second part of your comment about the outlet is if there was another outlet or another thing to be doing in the entertainment field, then someone can say, I chose the less kosher version. Let's just put it that way. But I think that until that exists, and that's really, it's fascinating to me with the WhatsApp status is, and even with social media, when you see the from brands that have taken off on social media, it's interesting because that means that their consumers have to be consuming it, and therefore there are the from people that are consuming it anyway. So why not scroll and see the content that inspires rather than the things that people shouldn't? So I think that's an amazing evolution. By the way, if anyone from the administration of Chaim Berlin is listening to this and you want to come on the Keep Hustling podcast, we would love to have you. Yaakov maybe will co-host and we could talk about TVs in people's houses. But I think, but that's interesting because it was a huge void. And it's, by the way, I think it still is a huge void. I have 5 kids, and obviously there's a tremendous amount of, thankfully, good kosher entertainment. But at least people are starting to realize that we need the entertainment and that people are going to consume it anyway. So if people are going to consume it anyway, you might as well be the guy who creates the right entertainment or the productive entertainment versus scrolling the rest of the stuff. So I'm glad you at least took that leap.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that I have seen, like many of us, in the past 5 to 10 years, people and organizations and just things that have rose to fame, not because they're necessarily better, they're just loud or they keep on going at it. And I think it's very scary. I understand the Rabbanim's way originally, like, hey, once you go on these platforms, you're giving it like some form of haskama of approval. But also, though, if you don't go on it, the the loved ones of the world making believe like they're great, they're the best, but like you see what they're putting out, and you're like, you're just, listen, if someone, just runs out and in a cow costume, people are going to look at them. So like people are getting a lot of attention and people are just subscribing to it, but it's not necessarily things that I want my kids or even myself to really see.
It's so funny because people, as I'm building a brand and we have a merch brand, and we're doing all this stuff that we're trying to build at Keep Hustling. People are like, you need to get more into memes. And I can't get myself to do these things that make no sense, that make people look like idiots. Like I don't get it. So maybe that's what I'm missing out on. You don't do a lot of it, so I can say that to you. I can't say that to a lot of people who are into, social and doing things like that. But there are two things I think in what you brought up that are interesting. One is, did you fear the backlash of being the guy or one of the pioneers that was trying to get this type of stuff out there in the podcast? And by the way, I do want to talk about the fact that you don't shy away from taboo topics in general in your podcast and in your network. But also, how did people initially react when you said, like, I want to do this? I want to do the media thing. I want to inspire others on a platform and in a way that nobody thought was possible before.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was very gradual. Like, my introduction into, I guess, media was very Heimish. It was, using Instagram stories and Snapchat and WhatsApp status. Like, I was doing WhatsApp status the day it came out. I'm confident 99.8% of people had no clue what it was for the first, I don't know.
They couldn't even get to it. What do you mean? Nobody knew how to get there.
No one even knew what it was. But like for me, it was like, oh, this is in a way a more kosher version of Snapchat. So it started very gradually. I think I was a little nervous, once I started doing the podcast and all of that. But also, I think I saw the opportunity because just looking back at my childhood, and then I grew up before the internet and while the internet came out. I guess the internet came out before I was even born, but like it wasn't really in practice.
It was dial-up. It was dial-up.
It was dial-up. I remember when that process was. So like that's not the same internet we have today. So I knew that there was tremendous opportunity. And like it's funny. I remember I was in Eretz Yisrael and for a year I went to Aish for a class every day. I mean, I was in Rabbi Centers, but I still went there during lunch. And Rav Gav was there. And I remember reaching out to Torah Anytime at the time. This is I don't know, in 2013 maybe. And their process for accepting people to Torah Anytime was rigorous. They didn't, again, it was a newer platform them. I don't know when they started. And obviously they're, amazing and they're at the forefront of, Torah online for sure. And it was like a hard process to even get Rav Gav on Torah Anytime. Like today, it's like he's one of the staples there. But I just saw there that like people were hungry for at least in Torah online. So once you have Torah online, then the rest is like, okay, how do you live a better life? How do you go through your finances as a Jew? How do you deal with mental health as a Jew? How do you, we're reading all these amazing, again, love Art Scroll and Feldheim, and they're all amazing. But like, I'm reading about these Gedolim after they die. Like, how about I read about the Gedolim while they're still with us? How about I read about people who they're not going to write a book about, but you'd love to hear about their life for an hour. It could really help you go closer to Hashem. So there's that. And I've always been extremely proud of the fact that I always turn to Das Torah, not literally every single thing. And I do make mistakes. And I've had conversations with, my Rosh Yeshiva, Reb Chaim Tzvi Center, and Rav Eitan Feiner and Rav Mati Neuberger. But I do go to them with questions. And there's been, I believe, tremendous amounts of views that we could have gotten. But hashkafically, they felt it wasn't the right thing. And I'll follow them till, I hope they don't tell me delete the channel, but I would think about it if they did. I hope they don't, but like I really follow them.
This was not on my list of questions, but I have to ask it now. There's two that came up, but I'll keep the last one for the end. But have you recorded content that you haven't put out because after the fact they or you have felt that it should be produced? Meaning, I think it's easier to say, I'm not going to discuss X topic, right? I'm going to ask, should we interview someone on whatever topic, and you or Rabbanim or together decide, okay, that's the topic we're not going to discuss. But what about like an amazing interview or a piece of content that you think would be great, or the interview takes a little bit of a turn to something that you're not so sure about? Have you ever had something that you've kept in the?
It's never taken a turn. I and Yoni Schwartz and Yehudis and Sarah, like a lot of people here do a lot of great research to make sure like we get the right kinds of people. So it's never taken a turn where like, we're talking to them about X and like they bring up Y, which is super controversial. We typically know what the conversations are going to be like. I could think of one scenario where someone came on and then shortly after they did something extremely controversial. And it was a question for Rabbanan, like, do we just never put this out?
It was already aired, or you were holding it?
No, it wasn't aired, and it was supposed to be aired.
I think it was aired already, and it's just sitting in the archives. That's a different story.
Yeah, and I believe it would have been a different, I guess, psak, but in the end, it was like just play it by ear. And as time went on, not even for the controversy of it, things shifted, and it didn't even make sense to put it out. I've since invited the person back. I think they were going through stuff. And there have been also logistical reasons. I think there's maybe, other than that, I think there's maybe two. One is I'm going to put it out. It's just there's a lot of like Hebrew and English to edit it. So I was just push it off. And then another one, I don't know the full story, but I edited, I recorded with someone and something was up. And I didn't realize at the time because I'm just, I guess, Baruch Hashem, not from that world. And then after they contacted me and they told me that they went through something really serious, some form of assault. And they said they just weren't themselves. And when they said it, I'm like, they did bring other people along. Like there were indicators. If I was a therapist, I would have known in 3 seconds, but I'm not. So they asked me, they just felt so uncomfortable, nothing to do with me. So they asked me to hold off on the interview. So I did. And
I love that.
But
by the way, it would be great to give it to them and say, listen, like, this is you in a moment of trauma, and like you should keep this. Not obviously, if it brings back trauma, you don't want to do this. But like, look, you did great. So I think that it's very hard to keep a level head with these kind of things, because at a certain point, a lot of people's hustle is about getting the views and getting the sales. And whether it's in the media business, whether it's in the legal field, whether it's in the insurance business, in any of our businesses, we have to think about where the line is. And I think that it's probably much harder for you, because it's literally like, how do I get views? How do I get listeners? So
yeah, so for sure. And I think I'm the force at Living L'Chaim that's like, how do we go viral? How do we make an impact in that way? And I believe my brother Ellie and Yoni Schwartz, Yoni's our producer, data guy, does so many things behind the scenes. Like they help, like, hey, the guidelines of like what's important to us and why it's important. Like they're there for that. And it's definitely not always easy. I literally just had something this past week where I don't know if he wants me to say his name, but there's a Rav that I deal with who's very helpful in getting certain interviews, specifically with the hostages, October 7th, or the family members. And there was, I'll say it, Rachel Goldberg and her husband were in New York I think it was last week. And I reached out and I said, hey, I interviewed them once. Sadly, I promised her that I'll interview her and her son when he gets freed. And, obviously it didn't, we won't have that until Mashiach comes.
I took my kids to the Shiva.
Wow. So powerful. And and I reached out to him and I said, hey, you, and at this point I have some form of relationship, but he's a lot closer to this person. And he said, and they were here, and like I had the opportunity and I probably could have gotten it. And he's like, Yaakov, just follow my advice. Like they're not in a place right now. It's like, we can't even imagine. And I'm like, listen, I want to interview them. And I part of me is like, hey, I think this could be like cathartic for them and like just talking it out and like, here's your platform for the world. But at the same time, as much as I want the views on that, what's more important? Like I'm doing a show called Inspiration for the Nation and like playing with people's like mental health. Again, I just want it because I believe in it. But if he's telling me, hey, Yaakov, it's not the right thing to interview them, I'm like, okay, I'm stepping away and like, I'd rather do the right thing. Like, cause
and by the way, they'll probably say yes, and then it's like, oh, you're in, you don't want to be that guy just for. And then, I think that's amazing, because I think that's an important life lesson for anything, not just about views. It's like, how do you know when to turn it off? How do you know when it's family time? How do you know when it's when it's like your brain must you must have notes on your phone that are like insane. And as it relates to the hustle, I want was there an interview that you never thought you would get that you got? Like, was there something that you were like, it was in your note, it was like, this is my dream guess on Inspiration for a Nation. This is my dream for Inspiration for a Nation.
I
And then
think
like
so.
it just
Yeah,
happened.
not dream because I really don't care for politics. I think politics is so stupid. Sorry for anyone who likes politics. I understand the value of it. I just personally, it's not my thing. So I knew that like when I started this, I'm like, who's the most famous from person, Orthodox person? It's Ben Shapiro. Again, maybe there's arguments like, other kinds of people. So for me, it was when I got that interview, shout out to, he probably doesn't want me to say, but my friend who made it happen. But like, it was, well, I didn't even say his name, but because I don't think he'll want me to say. But like, yeah, when I got that, I'm like, whoa, this is a crazy level. Again, it's weird because on one end, he's like, pretty sure they referenced him on Saturday Night Live this past week. I saw a clip. I'm like he's that famous that like the world knows who he is. And a lot of them don't like him. A lot of them do like him. But in the Frum world also, he's like a regular Frum guy at the end of the day. I mean, he's not regular, but it's a cool mix. So I think he was the person that I'm like, whoa. And then like I've said bigger people than him, Elon Musk. I would love to interview Elon Musk. And people are like, you're crazy. It's never going to happen. I'm like, maybe, but like, I don't know. This world, these things are possible. You never know.
And that is keep hustling. Actually, what we talk about is defining the hustle and also being okay with redefining the hustle, right? Like, I don't think you'll be broken if Elon Musk never ends up on Inspiration for a Nation, right? I mean,
yeah,
it'll be great. It'll be really cool if it happens, but like that's a real rocket ship of an idea, no pun intended. By the way, Ben Shapiro is a dream guest of the Keep Hustling podcast, and my wife is from LA and from the Valley where he used to live, and I used to hang out with him like every Simchas Torah. He's a great chazan, by the way. Davs to the Ummah. He's go-to kedusha is Yerushalayim Shel Zahav. In case you're wondering, I'm just throwing that out there. But he, yeah, I think he's an amazing example of this also, which is everybody has to have a line, and everyone has to realize that their hustle has to begin somewhere, want to get somewhere, but also end somewhere. And I think also, I mean, I imagine being a public figure like you are, that there's certain times when you're just like, I want to do this, I want to do that, or I want to grab this guest, and then kind of have to just reset the hustle. But how do you, I mentioned this before we went live, I have to ask you, your platform, different than almost every other platform I follow, is constantly evolving and adding. And it's not just Inspiration for a Nation, and it's not just Kosher Money. It's the shows just keep evolving. And from the outside, it looks like a natural progression. Like, oh, of course I'll have a show with, about money because it came up in an episode and you decided that you would run with it. But how do you keep that organized and figure out which direction to go in to also not go too far off of what you're trying to achieve? Like not release 100 ideas come your way and you choose to release 90 of them. Like that also probably wouldn't work.
Yeah, well, the answer to the latter part, I think it's like a muscle. The more you train it, the more you could handle. So, you're seeing this guy who's lifting weights when it's 250 pounds. He didn't start there. So he knows, on Tuesday when he lifts 250, the next day he could push it to 254. I don't know how weights work. Clearly, I mean, like,
you look exactly.
but so like I think it's with time it builds slowly, so it's easier to like know what works and what doesn't work. But to answer the first part, I wouldn't classify myself as someone who's good at business. I think people are good at different things. But I do think that one of the strongest qualities that I have that is really great for business and really great for creation or content or just dealing with people, maybe psychology, is being desperate to understand the audience. And I think when it comes to business, podcast, whatever it is, like I have so many people who call me and ask me for advice. Please don't call me. It's getting annoying at this point. But like so many people call me and ask me for advice.
You can DM us on the podcast and I will stalk Yaakov. How's that?
That's funny.
For you.
Yeah, we
will have a Yaakov stalking service.
So basically, they ask me like, "Oh, how do you start a podcast? How do you do this and that?" And I always tell them like, "Who are you creating this for?" And it's usually like they're doing it for themselves or they want to build this business. And I'm like, and that's okay. And sometimes that works, but usually it's going to fade out. It's going to, because if you're creating for the audience, create for what they want. Okay, there are limitations, like I said in the beginning, like some people find anything entertaining. You got to, have some kind of guide that you're like, "Oh, these are the principles we're following." But I am so obsessed with following what people like. So this kosher money, was a spinoff of me interviewing these awesome human beings, and it was with Naftali Arutz, I remember, and obviously he's been baked into kosher money a lot. And then from there, like we did an episode with Rabbi Babad from Relief, and it's like, wait, there's a whole like world of mental health that we didn't go through. And then from there, like we have podcast therapy with Dr. Zimmerman, which is like
My
mental
neighbor.
health, but he's amazing. On like just like a personal level. And then it's like, well, we don't have anything for kids, and just trying to keep on following, like, okay, what do you like? What don't you like? And how could like what are people talking about by their Shabbos tables, and how could we create information around there to help them focus on what really matters?
When you say it, it sounds like much more of a natural progression. So I like that, because I think that for people who are listening, who are thinking about how their careers will evolve and how their lives will evolve, I think that a lot of people get caught up in there. It has to be from the outset planned. Where what I think you're saying is you literally just started Inspiration for a Nation, and then things just, oh, we should talk about this. Oh, that was a great episode that was well received. And by the way, people sent in 150 questions afterwards. Well, that's a podcast in its own right, and things like that. So I know I'm not allowed to ask this, but I have to, just because, if we don't push the envelope, we don't push the envelope here. Keep hustling.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite episode? Now, you said Ben Shapiro was like the nuclear guest, but like the one that, like, if someone were to tell you, I've never listened to an episode of Inspiration for a Nation. I'll do it this way. Not your favorite.
I get that question all the time.
That's right. But now I'm asking it on air. Like, what is your, I don't want to say the one you're most proud of, because that's not fair, because some of the ones, when you start something, obviously early on episodes are different, but like, I don't want to ask straight data, like what's the most listened to episode? Because I'm guessing is it the Poland Goldberg episode? Is that the number one listened to one, or is it Shapiro?
The answer is I don't know. I don't think it's either of those, but I don't know the answer. Like it's like I interviewed the son of Hamas that has, I don't.
Oh, that was a crazy episode. I forgot about that.
Last I checked, that has like 600,000 views. So that's probably up there, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Genuinely, like, have no clue. Like, I guess I'm like looking through my episodes. My question back to you is, like you said, you have 5 children. Which of your 5 kids is the favorite one?
Okay, so that's 1 second. So here's what I would say.
Yeah,
that's fine. First of all, we started the episode by saying I'm the interviewer here. You're the interviewee. Okay, this is not how this is going to work.
But the question's an answer. But to answer your question, I could lie and totally make up one and give you like an emotional, amazing story from it, or like how that led to a shidduch, or that led to the birth of a baby that was never going to come. Like, I have crazy stories like that, but genuinely my answer is not, like, I don't have one. Like, I get obsessed with, like, I put out an episode sometimes and I'm like, I'm so proud of it. And I tell people to go watch it and listen to it genuinely, because I'm like, this really touched me. This really moved me. But it's shift. It's such like a moody thing. Like,
okay, I'll change the question. Fine, I'll change the question. How's that?
Today was my favorite episode.
Has there been, and don't tell us which one, but this directly relates to your hustle and the way that you keep hustling, keep going. Has there been an episode or a part of the network and show that you've put something like a lot of heart into, thought it was going to work out, and then it didn't? Like an episode that you thought was going to perform extremely well, and then it didn't. And then how do you recalibrate your brain to what's going to work or what's going to continue to work?
Yeah, so it goes both ways, because at the end of the day, I'm not a Navi, and I'm not a prophet. I don't really know what people actually want. It's just trying to figure it out from having conversations or seeing comments. So it goes both ways. There are sometimes episodes where, I'm like, oh, this is going to get 100,000 views, easy. And it gets 30,000 views. Or the opposite. I'm like, oh, this will get, I don't think people like, it's going to get like 20,000 views. And it gets 200,000 views. So there is some unpredictability. I don't mind saying the episode, because I'm very proud of it. There was an episode with this woman. I think she's 93. She became from at 90 or something. I don't remember the exact story. She lives in Baltimore. I saw a video. It was very viral, and And I'm like, she's the loveliest, awesome person. And like, whoa, for someone to be able to change her entire life, to keep Shabbos, keep kosher at 90, like it's great. Like that's like, she belongs in like the Torah, you know.
Right.
It's crazy, and I was confident it was going to do so well to the point that like I barely ever travel now for podcasts. And I'm like, I'm going to Baltimore. I went with Ari. Shout out to Ari, and we made a whole day out of it. Then we came back, and I don't remember the audio for sure. I barely ever check the audio, but the video I could check right now. I don't remember exactly. It got like 20,000 views, 25,000 views, and I was confident it would do way more than that. But I also like take a step back and I'm like, don't like, yes, when you have hopes for whatever it is, like let's say it's business, you're like hoping to make $1 million on a deal and you make $100,000. Again, it's not ideal and it's a letdown, but like, bro, you just made $100,000. Like I got 20,000 people plus, I don't know, 10, 20, 30,000 people to listen to it. Like that's crazy. And I got so many nice comments. So,
and I did something that I'm proud of, and I did something the right way that I'm proud of, that I wanted to do, right? That's where I think people often get lost, is that they get caught up in the numbers and things like that, and they don't say like, okay, so you thought it was going to get 100,000, but it didn't. It's not a waste of a day. It's not a waste of time. You still have this interview that you're proud of. It still probably inspired you in some way.
I want to share a moment. I want to share a moment based on what you're saying. I just shared a clip last night. It's from Shark Tank. It's this farmer who has this like tree company, and essentially he's doing very well, but he needs some money to do even better. And I don't remember the exact details. And he's telling the sharks that he charges, I think, $5 for it or $6, and he makes $1 off each one. And all the sharks are like, you could charge like $12 for it. And he's like, yeah, but these are farmers. They can't afford it. And they're like, no, but the ones that could, like, who cares? Like, you'll make so much money. He's like, yeah, but what about the farmers? And basically there was one of the sharks, I don't even know which one it was. He's like, I love what you're doing. I love what you represent. And I'm going to invest in you and we'll keep it the way you want it to be. And I saw like a stat, like his company's now worth $100 million, which is not even the moral of the story. Even if his company went bankrupt, I think there's so much like, you listen to Kosher Money or you just live as a Jewish life. Like we are so bombarded with how much things cost, no matter where you live. I don't care if you live in New York, out of New York, it's expensive and it's hard and it's difficult. And it's not we have to make money to support our family. And that's so important. And it's holy, it's a mitzvah, but also to be grounded on like, don't get lost in, and I don't think it's a steer to what you're doing. Like, don't get lost in the hustle of it. Like, why are we doing this? And like this farmer for me was like, I look up to this guy. Like, that's what it's about. It's like, hey, he's creating a product. Yeah, he's making $1 off it. And he's making good money. He said he's making, made $7,000 the other day. Like, are you having your business to make money? Are you doing everything you're doing to get attention? Or like, you're really trying to be like Hashem, be a creator, put out and make this world a better place?
100%. And I think that's, and by the way, that is right on what Keep Hustling is. Keep Hustling is about defining a person's, the comments I get most, which are people who hate on hustle culture. And I say that I'm actually trying to build a whole different hustle culture. And that's figuring out what a person's hustle is and what they're, and just if a person keeps doing what they think is right in the right way, then that's how they get their hustle going. So I will say this has been awesome. I feel like I really flipped the tables here. And I feel like that anyone who's listening can appreciate, hopefully now, the amount of work that you put in, the effort and the thought, and be inspired by another person. I feel like you should need to do an episode of Inspiration Nation, like flip the script, or then get your brother interviewed. But we'll do that. I'll reach out to him to figure that out. We'll get him to pressure you. As you know, we end every episode by asking our guests to leave us with their favorite inspirational and motivational quote. So with that, I'll say, really, Yaakov, thank you again for taking out of your busy schedule. Thank you for letting me interview you, which I know is rare. Thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. So my favorite quote is, it's going to sound very egotistical because it is. It's a quote by me, but it's not really by me. It's a quote by Walt Disney that I modified for me. And for me personally, it means everything. Walt Disney said, we don't make movies to make money. We make money to make more movies. And I changed it, kind of like did Michael Scott here, but I also changed it. He just quoted it, Wayne Gretzky. So I changed it to, we don't make podcasts to make money. We make money to make more podcasts. And I want to blow this up. I want to put it in the studio. I want to put it in my office. And I just want to keep on seeing that, living it, and doing it.
Well, we hope you keep hustling because we love what you're doing and we love the content. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
This has been another episode of Keep Hustling. Remember, do well by doing good. And of course, and always, keep hustling. All right, hustlers, that brings us to the end of another fantastic episode. Thank you for listening. The listeners are the most important part of this show. If you like what you heard, please leave us a review wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us reach more listeners. Plus, be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. We have some amazing guests and topics lined up for you, and we don't want you to miss out. And finally, if you have any suggestions, comments, or even just want to say hello, please feel free to reach out to us on all social media platforms. We are Keep Hustling Pod on Instagram, X, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We would love to hear from you to continue the conversation. Thanks again for tuning in and supporting our podcast. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, stay curious, stay hungry, and keep hustling.